When it comes to choosing a smartwatch, most people think they know what they're doing, but I find that many people make the wrong decision and buy a smartwatch that is not the best one to suit their needs, and they end up having complaints further on down the road. And by far the biggest discrepancy I see here, and as well as that, the most common question I get is between Tizen OS and Wear OS. So if you have an Android phone, these two are really almost definitely going to be your main decision when you're buying a smartwatch. These are both the most common ones for Android phones, and they're both really good ecosystems and both great operating systems when you're buying a smartwatch. But which one's actually the best one for your needs? So right off the bat, a lot of people might say, unconditionally, Samsung's better because it's smoother, it's faster, whatever other reasons. But honestly, there's a really good argument to be made for both of these operating systems. So in this video, I want to dive in and really tear it apart and figure out which one's the best one for you and why. So the first thing I want to talk about is the voice assistants, which I think is really underrated when you're looking at watches. I think people don't utilize this enough, and it's something that I really like about watches, and it's something I think a lot about when I'm buying watches, because the voice assistant is a great way to get around the problems you have with a tiny screen. Sometimes it takes a while to navigate through the watch and find a timer or send a text and things like that, but if you just summon the voice assistant, it can work really quickly. So Google's Wear OS obviously has their Google Voice Assistant on there, which is extremely powerful, integrates really well with, incredible features that it has, as I think most people pretty much know what this is capable of. So being able to search things, being able to set timers, emails, texts, like whatever you're doing, it really has in-depth capabilities, and Google sinks a lot of money into optimizing this every single year. Now, on the flip side, looking at the Tizen OS, which is made by Samsung, of course, the voice assistant they have on those watches is Bixby, which is slightly slower, and while it has come a long way, it's still really far from perfect. So looking at category 1, voice assistants, I think Google Wear OS definitely brings a really strong case here, and I would say they win that category. The second category is navigation within the operating system. So looking at Google's Wear OS, you typically have a crown on the side that you can rotate and it scrolls. And then Samsung watches typically have a rotating bezel or a touch bezel, as we saw on the Galaxy Active 2. Now, between these two, I find that the more robust option is definitely Samsung's Tizen OS, because the touch bezel or the rotating bezel works in almost every single app, every single widget, and just anywhere you can possibly find yourself on this watch. Where on the flip side, looking at Google's Wear OS, there are many apps out there, and even some Google ones that when you start scrolling on the crown, it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't do anything within that widget, and you would expect it to scroll, but sometimes it just has no function at all. And I think that's partially because Google hasn't really been reinvesting that much into Wear OS. They haven't really been optimizing it much lately, or really making any changes at all. If we actually look at the watches though, you'll see that they navigate fairly similarly, despite Samsung being a little bit smoother. So you'll see that if you tap and hold on the watch face, you can change your watch faces. If you swipe down from the top, you get your quick settings, but Samsung has an advantage here because you can actually go and swipe through all of your different quick settings. You can have more than just 6. You can have 12, you can have 18, like whatever you want. You can have many different watch quick settings there, and I think that's a really nice feature to have. Now, if you swipe up from the bottom on Samsung, nothing happens. If you swipe up from the bottom on Wear OS, you get your notifications. Now on Samsung, to get your notifications, you swipe over from the left, and then on Wear OS, if you swipe over from the left, you get like a little My Day thing, and it tells you about the weather and the time and the date, which is honestly pretty nice, and I like that they have that. Of course, you can access that on Samsung watches from Bixby app. Now, if you swipe over from the right, you start getting into your widgets or your tiles, whatever you want to call them, and they're kind of just quick displays to show you a little bit about the apps that you have. So it might be the weather, it might be like what today's date is, or things like that. And Wear OS watches are limited to 5 tiles or widgets, whereas Samsung, you have significantly more than that, and you can go through and see, a lot more. And they're also more in-depth and a little bit more robust on the Samsung watch. So like I said before, as far as navigation goes, I think Samsung really takes this one home and does a much better job of that because of their rotating bezels being, incorporated in every single app, and also because they have more tiles, more widgets, and more quick settings. Category number 3 then is styles, and I think this is an important one which could drive a lot of people towards Wear OS watches, because Samsung's Tizen OS is really only used on Samsung watches. So we have the Samsung Watch, the Watch Active 2, and while there are quite a few watches, the styles are a little bit more limited than you might see on Wear OS. And that's because Wear OS can be used on many different watch manufacturers. So we have Fossil, Michael Kors, we have like Skog, and just endless watches to choose from there. And I'll actually be making a video probably in a couple days to show you guys the many different watches to choose from and help you decide which one's actually the best Wear OS watch. And so if you want to see that, make sure you go down and subscribe and click the bell icon. But regardless, you have many different colors, many different designs and styles that I think Google Wear OS definitely does a better job than Samsung in having a variety of styles. Category number 4 then is the apps you can get on the watch. And this is actually not perfect for either of these. Generally, watch apps are a little bit lacking compared to phone apps, and it's still kind of the Wild West in that sense, where people are making watch apps, but they're really kind of buggy sometimes. They're not perfect. And between the two, I find that Google Wear OS has a little bit of a better selection of apps, but Samsung has more apps made by Samsung, which are generally more robust and more integrated apps. So if you're looking for a huge variety of like games and other things, you might be better off with the Wear OS watch. But if you just want a select few apps that are really the essential apps you need for a smartwatch and you want them to work very well, Samsung watches definitely pull through there. So I'd say this one is a conditional win for either party. I'll call it a tie for the purposes of this video. So this next category is connectivity, which may be dependent a little bit on which watch you buy based on what hardware they have, if they have cheaper sensors in there. But in general, I would say that connectivity is significantly better on Samsung watches than it is on Wear OS watches. And this is partially because Samsung has a whole ecosystem built around this. So if you buy Galaxy Buds or a Samsung phone, it just connects very, very well. Now, even if you don't have Samsung devices, it still connects very well to other earbuds or other Android phones or even Apple phones. It works really well, but especially with Samsung. The next category I want to talk about is health tracking. This is something that I think a lot of people should be focusing on when buying a smartwatch because it's really a big thing that your phone doesn't really do well and like your laptop doesn't do well, but watches, it's really their stronghold. Being able to, it's a wearable device, it can track your fitness, your sleep, it can track a lot about your health. And so when you're buying one, you should really be considering, are the health features on this actually good? And I find that a lot of Wear OS watches just have this simple little 2 heart rate sensor on the back, and it does a decent job of tracking like your heart rate sometimes if you're doing a workout. But by far, Samsung has a total landslide on this one. They definitely win this category for many different reasons. So specifically looking at right here, the Watch Active 2, not only does it have more robust sensors on the back, you may have an ECG eventually, should be being released this quarter, but you also have 8 heart rate sensing diodes, so it is more accurate there. It has auto activity tracking, so if you just start walking, it'll identify that, it'll start a workout. If you start running, it'll do the same, swimming, biking. It does a really good job of identifying workouts, tracking them, and accurately recording your information in the app. So on top of that, it also does a good job of sleep tracking, among many other things with your fitness. So like I said before, guys, this is a no-brainer when you're looking for fitness tracking. The Samsung, especially the Watch Active 2, does an excellent job of that, and Wear OS really doesn't even come close. The next category is the app on your phone, and a similarity between both of these is actually they both have 2 apps. So one of them is going to be the one that controls like the watch itself, and the other one is going to be where you find all of your fitness data. So looking at the apps for Google Wear OS, it's really going to be Google Fit, which is your fitness one, obviously, and then also Google Wear, which shows you not really a whole lot about your watch. You can choose watch faces and you can rearrange your tiles, but that's basically all you can do. The Samsung watches then use Samsung Health, which I think is a great app. Maybe it doesn't integrate as well with third-party devices like scales or like heart rate tracking bands. Maybe Google Fit does a better job of that, but it definitely does a really good job of organizing all of your data in a very logical way that's easy to read and easy to interpret. Now, looking at the actual app that controls the watch, it's going to be Galaxy Wear, which is a very robust app, and you have a lot of controls in there where you're able to not only change like the widgets and the watch face on there, but do a lot more of in-depth, tuning on your phone so you don't have to go through the settings on your watch, and I just find it's a better app overall. So between these watches, which one's actually the best one to buy? And I would say if you're looking for a different style, or if you're looking for a classier, kind of shiny watch, maybe like a Fossil Gen 5, or if you're looking for a voice assistant, those are all great reasons to get a Wear OS watch. Now, if you're looking for health tracking, or you want to track your sleep, or if you want to have more robust apps that are integrated a little more smoothly, I think Samsung's watches generally do a better job of that. And on top of that, I find that Samsung seems to be paying more attention to their watch interface, and they do a better job of updating it and keeping it modern and making sure that everything works as well as possible. And so for that reason, if I had to choose one for myself, I would generally kind of lean towards the Tizen OS from Samsung. But that's just me. Honestly, there is a time and place for both of them, and I really do like both of these operating systems. Comment down below and let me know which one you like and why. As always, guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.